it used to be taken for granted. You know, we're the capitalists and we're against communism.
Right.
Well, now it's come to a point where it seems like our government isn't even willing to denounce communism.
Just because he called Taiwan a country, he had to, with the Chinese, this is something that's really big in China, you have to say my mistake. So I think he tried to say it in Chinese. He said my mistake. Hello again, and I want to welcome everybody once again to the Uncensored Pilgrims podcast. I'm Marty McLain along with
Paul Price.
Paul Price. The price is right today, and
Or in Chinese, Bao Luo.
what does that mean?
That's my name.
Say it again.
Bao Luo.
Bongla. Bongla.
Bao Luo.
No, here's what I want to do. We're going to talk about China. We're going to have a discussion on China. Now, look, when we talk about these topics, we don't know everything about it, but we want to say enough to maybe, stoke your own imagination, maybe make you want to go look up the evidence yourself and do some research yourself, because there's a lot of stuff happening in our world today, and if you're uninformed, it puts you at a disadvantage because all this stuff is going on, and you really don't understand it, and you really need to have some wisdom today. So we're not trying to be experts, but we are trying to be just a couple of pilgrims passing through, trying to sow a little bit of seeds of information here and there. And but Paul, today, in honor of us doing China, I want to ask you: did you ever see the series Kung Fu with David Carradine?
No, that's
before your time.
I guess it's before my time because I don't know about it.
Yeah, you probably weren't even a zygote back then. I mean,
I have seen some Bruce Lee.
Actually, David Carradine, I didn't realize this until I started doing some more reading on it. He actually beat Bruce Lee out for the part. Not literally beat him out, but,
He auditioned or something.
He out-auditioned Bruce Lee. And anyway, David Carradine, he stars us in the 1800s out west, and he's supposed to be raised in the mode of a Shaolin priest monk, and he knows his kung fu. Now he has a teacher, if I remember correctly, the teacher's blind, and he calls David Carradine. You know what he calls him? You know what his nickname is on that show?
No.
Grasshopper.
Oh, okay. I've heard that.
Grasshopper.
So that's where that came from.
That's where it comes from. So I think, you being Grasshopper on this episode would probably help people understand what we're talking about, because most people my age, they remember Honorable Grasshopper. He was always learning and always trying to, I don't know, there's always candles, if I remember right, always these candles, and he's always learning something. And, older man calls him Grasshopper. So, you can be Grasshopper. And also, here's another one. Do you remember
Well, you can be Shensheng.
Shishong. What is that?
That's like the...
Is that sensei?
Yeah. That's the Chinese version.
You have to bow to your sensei?
Yeah.
Kid
bow to your
Dynamite
sensei.
did. He had
bow to your sensei.
to Rex Kwon Do, man.
Rex Kwon Do. Hey,
Yeah.
if you're here to start putting out some Rex Kwon Do, I'm not ready for that.
No, I wasn't ready for Rex Kwon Do when I saw it first time.
Break the wrist, walk away.
Yeah, the other arm. Okay, here we go. Do you remember the song Kung Fu Fighting?
Yes.
No, I don't think there's a song out there that can put you in a better mood than the beginning of Kung Fu Fighting.
Right.
I mean, just kind of you get a little bit mellowed out, and all of a sudden, and it starts. I love these words. Everybody was Kung Fu Fighting. Those kicks were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening, but they fought with expert timing.
Yeah.
We used to love that song, man. We actually listened to it on an 8-track tape.
Yeah.
Growing up. I remember my brother had it. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about China today. China, they're a big country. I mean, they got a lot of people. And their economy is pretty good. Now, it's not the size of the United States economy. At this time, they keep saying, well, China's about to take over the United States. China's about to take over the United States. But we'll get into that. I think their economy actually is $17.73 trillion a year, and the U.S. economy is $23.32 trillion per year.
You said they got a lot of people. but I think they're actually on the decline. I think they're suffering an upcoming population bomb.
Yeah.
You heard that? I think we talked about that
We have talked
in the
about
past.
that.
They got a population bomb on the horizon, and that actually makes China dangerous right now because they know that they're at their strongest right now, and the longer they wait to act on things,
They won't have the people.
they're going to have less strength in the future, not more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a CNN article here, and it's titled "Chinese Province Drops Restrictions on Unmarried People Having Children in Bid to Halt Plummeting Birth Rates."
Yeah.
It says it's in the Sichuan. I'll say these words with confidence.
That's
And
how
if
you
I
should
say
do
them-
it.
Well, if I say
Just
it
be
with
very confident, and
and
it'll be
everybody
correct.
think, man, how do you know how to say
Yeah.
that? But in the Sichuan province, the government only allows married couples to register the births of up to 2 children, but starting February 15, all citizens, including unmarried parents, can register with no ceiling on the number of children. And
No
that's,
ceiling at all.
no. It says Beijing scrapped its decades-long and highly controversial one-child policy in 2015 after realizing that the restrictions had contributed to a rapidly aging and shrinking workforce that could severely distress the country's economic and social stability. So to arrest the falling birth rate, the Chinese government announced in 2015 that it would allow married couples to have 2 children, but after a brief uptick in 2016, the national birth rate has continued to fall. And they said that they are going to start introducing Barry White music. I'm kidding.
Okay. Well, it's true across the board that when living standards increase, birth rate decreases. We
Yes,
talked about
we did.
talked about that,
That
in
is-
in previous weeks too.
You're exactly right.
And so even if you ignore the whole one-child policy thing, just the fact that China is on the upswing in terms of living standards,
Right.
and people are starting to demand higher wages
Yeah.
in China. And so these factors are going to naturally start to decrease the birth rate all on their own.
Right. Right.
So
And so and we see that happening. And when you start reading the history of China, they have come so far in such a relatively short period of time. Because if you look in, the communists came to power in 1949, and there's a lot to be said. Me and you talked about this prior to our podcast about the Long March with the retreat of the Red Army, and how they, like, about a year's worth of retreat, 6,000 miles, and that put the National Army between them and the Japanese during World War II. And
yeah, so what happened is that the Chinese Red Communists were in the midst of a civil war with the dynastic powers and those people who succeeded them. If I remember right, the guy's name was Chiang Kai-shek. Does that sound right? The
Chiang Kai-shek.
No, Chiang Kai-shek.
I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah. So that was the leader of the non-communist, Republic of China forces, and they had the communists surrounded. And then you brought up the Long March. That is where the communists were able to somehow miraculously escape down a very long march, where I think by the end of it all said and done, only about 10% of them wound up surviving the whole ordeal, which is amazing. But then Mao Zedong was able to garner a lot more support after that. What they did is that they agreed to a ceasefire in their civil war because they had an external enemy, the Japanese,
Right.
coming through the northeastern area of China in Manchuria. They were coming down through there. And so the Chinese communists were very smart about what they did. They allowed the other side of the Civil War to take the brunt of the fighting.
Right.
And so they let the Japanese kill off most of their enemies, and then
Made
they
it a lot easier for them.
made it a whole lot easier once World War II was over.
That's not many people realize that, but that pretty good strategy. Just
It was a very cunning strategy,
yeah,
and it's really sad for the Chinese people and for the whole world that we Westerners allowed the communists to do what they did. Like, I know there was a time when, talk about interventionism, if the U.S. had wanted to stop the spread of communism in China, there was a time when we could have done it. It's obviously far too late now. And we can talk more about that because now it's so bizarre. It used to be taken for granted. We're the capitalists and we're against communism.
right.
And then it came to a point when you were even considered to be hyper paranoid if you were worried about communist infiltrators, right?
Yes.
We had the whole McCarthyism thing where
Yeah.
we were having, these internal inquisitions sort of thing, like, are you a communist?
Got blacklisted in Hollywood.
Yeah, and so that was considered, that's such, fear mongering.
Yeah.
Well, now it's come to a point where it seems like our government isn't even willing to denounce communism.
Yeah, I think we mentioned last week how you had communism from China adopting a little bit of capitalism, and now you've got the capitalism of the West adapting a little bit of the socialism.
We're supposed to be big afraid of the Russians now, right? But the Russians, they're
Yeah.
not communists anymore.
No, they're a bunch of oligarchs, aren't they?
But the people who stayed true to like the Stalinist ideal,
Yeah.
the Chinese, we're trading with them left and right, and we got no problem with them. We're not pulling our companies out of China, are we? I mean,
goodness, no.
McDonald's didn't make a big to do about, we can't do business with China because
Forced
they're
labor.
communist, forced
Or they're
labor.
harvesting organs from who? The Falun Gong, or the Uyghurs.
I'm sorry, but I have no patience for this anti-Russia hysteria that we're supposed to be buying into right now. Everybody's supposed to be so afraid of the Russians and so pro-Ukraine, and
Yeah.
I've got nothing against Ukraine,
Right.
and I'm not in favor of Putin invading the Ukraine either.
Yeah, Putin's not a good guy.
No, so don't get me wrong on that. But on the other hand, when I see people driving around on the road with a Ukraine flag as a bumper sticker, I'm thinking
Yeah.
something's going on here.
Yeah.
What does this random guy in Georgia in the United States care about Ukraine?
Yeah.
Something's going on here.
It's hard. Yeah. It's
People
it's
are being
hard.
brainwashed by the media for some reason because last I checked, most Americans can't even put their finger on a map and show you where Ukraine might be.
Yeah.
But they're driving around with a Ukrainian flag on their bumper sticker and F Putin and all these kind of slogans on their bumper sticker, and I'm thinking, what do you care about that? You don't know anything about these countries.
Right. And
What's going on with that?
And so all the focus is on Russia when we should be thinking about China. China
Well, absolutely.
Because China is much more the threat, and we're going to see some of this.
Russia's having trouble even dealing with the Ukraine militarily,
Yeah.
which is a neighbor of theirs, and it's a large country, but let's face it, it's no United States.
No, my goodness, no.
And they're having trouble with Ukraine.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to be afraid of them? I don't think so.
Well, here's the thing about the Chinese with the communists. They always have these grand plans, and they do. You go to 1958 with the Great Leap Forward, and you have the Cultural Revolution, 66 through 76. And they were still kind of closed off to the West, and then you have they opened back up to the West. At 79, diplomatic relations were established with the United States. And eventually, when it was 2000, 2001, something like that, they were accepted into the World Trade Organization. And that's when everything just exploded for the Chinese as far as their economy. It couldn't have gone better for them
Right.
after that. I mean, they were wheeling and dealing. Everybody wanted to go to China. There's over 1 billion people there. You could get your products made cheaper over there, and then low tariffs or whatever to bring them back in the United States.
Yep.
And it just made it where, hey, let's send a bunch of these jobs over to China.
And what we're doing when we do that is that we're disadvantaging our own people, and at the same
Building
time,
up our enemy.
we're participating in exploitation of the people that are being paid either no wages over there or, ridiculously low wages.
But now there is a group of folks over in China. There are quite a wide swath of the population. They have made great gains as far as standard of living goes.
And a lot of companies are moving out of China now.
Yeah.
Because they're now looking for new places where people don't expect to get paid anything.
Yeah.
Going over to like Vietnam now, a lot of the manufacturing's going to Vietnam.
So what we have is we have China. They are, should I say, existential threat.
I think we could say that.
And we have a situation where we are, through our trade, giving them all kinds of money.
Any country that has adopted the ideals of Karl Marx is an existential threat by definition. That's what they want to do. They want to bring down all the countries of the world and force everybody into communism.
And what's so smart about the Chinese and the government, the CCP, they got a lot going on upstairs because, they do some really smart things in a bad way.
Yeah.
Smart. But, here they are using capitalism in order to siphon the money out of the West.
And into their own
and
country.
Into, their communist, they allow a little bit of freedom. But you look at all that China owns. They've got this, what they call the Belt and Road Initiative that they began in, I think, maybe 2013 they began the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's supposed to be through all these countries. And I think 150 countries. And they're building ports, they're building bridges, building roads. In Asia, they're doing it in Central America, South America, Africa. And what they do is they loan money to these countries and they build ports and bridges and roads. And a lot of times they're not in the best of places. And so these ports aren't going to make enough money in order to pay back the Chinese. Yeah. So the Chinese, I reckon they default on their loans. So what you going to do when you default on a loan to the Chinese? What are they going to do?
I don't know. Seize the assets?
I reckon seize the assets. But also it is bringing a lot of economic difficulty back to China. I think they've spent $1 trillion or plan to spend $1 trillion on this Belt and Road Initiative. They even did it in Europe. They've done it in Italy. And they also spread that 5G network with Huawei, with the big 5G provider for Chinese. And everybody's kind of concerned when you get these, the Chinese 5G Huawei network, what all are they going to do with that? And so everybody gets concerned about that. So the Chinese here, let me tell you some companies. Now, they're communists, and anytime you deal with a Chinese company, you have to assume that you're dealing with the CCP.
You are, by definition.
Because there may be some, quote, private ownership of some of this stuff, but we really know who's the real owner.
If it comes out of communist China, then the real owner is the communist Chinese government.
Yes.
Period.
So here's some American companies that have been bought by Chinese companies. Mm-hmm. Chinese holdings, or sometimes you hear these companies, they got certain names. That's just so and so company. Well, they're actually owned by the Chinese, and they're making all these acquisitions in America. They actually own General Electric.
Really?
If I read correctly, and I was taught phonics at a young age. Also, AMC Theaters. Smithfield Farms, which is the largest pork processor and hog producer in the world. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel. IBM Personal Computer Division. They own a big chunk of General Motors. It's amazing. They bought up a lot of farmland in America. Matter of fact, according to what I see, they own 384,000 acres of American farmland. They've been trying to buy farmland near bases, some of our military bases. And some people are like, I don't think we need to be selling farmland that's close to these military bases. I think there's a situation up in South Dakota where they were wanting to buy near this Air Force base. And I'm not a rocket scientist, and you're close to one, but I know that's probably not a good idea to let your chief adversary buy land near a military base in America. And so there's actually a move in Congress. A bill has been introduced. It's called the Promoting Agriculture Safeguards and Security Act, which seeks to limit land purchases of the Chinese government in America.
Well, it seems to me that with everything you're reading out, there's only two possible conclusions about the leaders of our country.
Okay.
It's either one, they must be stupid,
Mm-hmm.
or they must be traitors to our country.
Yeah.
I don't see a third option.
Well, I think sometimes
To allow a Marxist communist country that is an avowed enemy of our way of life
right.
to purchase so many of these assets to
Yeah.
essentially own our country from within, that's either monumentally stupid or deliberately traitorous.
Well, I think they can not necessarily be traitorous. I think they can just be greedy.
Yeah.
And the money's there, and
I guess that is a third option, is just
I
totally and completely corrupt with
I-
no morals whatsoever.
I think that there's some greedy, and I think some of them are compromised.
Which, in another sense, that is being a traitor.
Yeah.
If you're putting your own greed over the welfare of your country and you're in the government, then that's being a traitor.
Okay, now let me read this to you. This is we were talking about the Belt and Road Initiative, and this is from Forbes magazine. It says Chinese President Xi Jinping. Did I say it right?
I think it's Xi Jinping.
Jinping. See, y'all may not know this, but Paul took a semester of Chinese when he was in
College.
at
college
UGA. At University of Georgia. He took
And one semester of Chinese is just enough to know that you ought not to be taking any more semesters of Chinese.
no Chinese, and I watched Kung Fu growing up,
Yeah.
so I'm at a
But
disadvantage.
now Kung Fu movies are not actually in a lot of them. Most of them are not Chinese language.
Japanese,
They're Cantonese.
Cantonese.
Well, okay, so
not Mandarin.
Mandarin Chinese is the Chinese of Beijing,
Okay.
but then in the southern part of China, over in the Hong Kong area where they did all the filming of all these Kung Fu movies,
Right.
they speak Cantonese, which is a different language. So,
Cantonese. Okay.
So like you've heard of not Bruce Lee, but
Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan.
I've been told I look like Jackie Chan. Matter of fact, people think I have Chinese blood in me. I don't, unless somebody's not telling me something. But I've often people.
I
have
gotta
asked me,
say, I don't know that I see that.
Well,
I don't think you look like Jackie Chan.
that. Somebody said you look like Jackie Chan. Somebody said you look like Jet Li. And I'm thinking, they tell me I'm Scott Irish.
Yeah, I think those people might need some glasses or something.
Now I get tired, but I do get told. I mean, I do. You look like Keanu Reeves. Well, he's half Hawaiian, I think, or something.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know. I don't know. I've done the genealogy. I've asked questions.
Yeah.
I probably just have not asked. Somebody has said that we may have some Seminole,
Okay.
but I think we have some criminal from in the past. But I don't know about Seminole.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, those guys. I like Jackie Chan. Have you seen his first movie? Well, I don't know if it's technically his first movie, but the one where he is doing the drunken boxing. Have you seen that one?
I must
The
have missed
Drunken Master.
No.
That's a good movie.
Okay, the Drunken Master. Okay.
I love the just the martial arts in that movie is so impressive, especially at the very end of the movie. He's learned this new method of kung fu where he kind of stumbles around looking like he's drunk,
Yeah.
but he's able to take the enemy off guard because he's stumbling around, but he's actually
Doing it on purpose.
doing it on purpose.
You know, the best martial arts scene ever, and other than, well, I'll just put it this way. The best martial arts scene ever is when Bruce Lee beats up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Is that right?
It's better than Chuck Norris.
I like
Don't
the Chuck
tell
Norris
Chuck. Don't tell Chuck I said that.
because I've got that one
Okay.
on tape. I've seen the Chuck Norris fight, and that was pretty good.
See, Chuck Norris, he's he knows everything.
Yeah.
So I want to be careful what I say here. But when Bruce Lee fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that's classic, man. You got to look that up.
I'm going to have to watch that one because I haven't seen that.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've only seen the Chuck Norris one.
But we say all that to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative.
Okay, back to the Belt and
Okay,
Road.
the president, he calls it a project of the century, something that would alter the global balance of power and influence. This is an article from Forbes. It says, now he has chosen more humble language, speaking of it in terms of reform and retrenchment. China's Belt and Road Initiative seems to have fallen very short of its original goals, as well as the fears that once widely engendered in the West. China's Belt and Road Initiative was always something of a mafia-like enterprise. Beijing would approach poorer countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East, and on the periphery of Europe, and offered loans for important infrastructure projects such as ports, rail links, dams, roads, and the like. State-owned Chinese banks would arrange the financing, and Chinese contractors would execute the projects and manage them after they were completed. If the host country failed to pay, the projects would come under Chinese ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, Beijing, am I saying Beijing right?
Beijing, yeah.
Beijing gained influence and considerable leverage over the nations that allowed themselves to become involved. Since Xi first rose to the presidency, China has made over $1 trillion in such loans in some 150 countries, making the country the world's largest official creditor.
Mm.
Is that kind of like a international loan shark? Maybe?
Exactly. You know what? Yeah. You know what the name of Beijing used to be? You probably heard of it.
It wasn't the Forbidden City, was it? What was the Forbidden City? Which city was the Forbidden City?
That I'm not sure about. Beijing used to be called Peking.
Peking.
You heard of Peking duck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Beijing was Peking.
I believe so.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, we are learning all kinds of things. Well, here's something else that Chinese have done that America should be kind of concerned about. Back in 1999, President Jimmy Carter turned over. Back in 79, President Jimmy Carter, when he was president in 79, did the Panama Canal Treaty with Panama, saying that in 1999 the Panama Canal would revert to the government of Panama.
Great idea there.
That we would no longer own the Panama Canal. That we would basically give it back to Panama.
Now, why did he do that? What was his reasoning?
Do you remember Jimmy Carter?
He was a little before my time.
Okay. Jimmy Carter is why we had Ronald Reagan.
Right.
Okay. Jimmy Carter, as far as the Soviet Union goes, if I'm not mistaken, he said, we're just going to have to learn to live with them.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronald Reagan came up and said, no, they're an evil empire. They got to go.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Carter... he was kind of we had the Iranian hostage crisis, and such. And he did try an ill-fated rescue attempt, but I was never, even when I was that age, an early teenager, I was never a Jimmy Carter fan. Even though he's from Georgia, everybody's like Jimmy Carter, and I was like Ronald Reagan.
So if Biden is our Jimmy Carter of today, we need a new Reagan to come up and stand up to the Chinese.
I think that might be a good idea. But here's what happens. In 1999, the Panama Canal goes out of our control and goes to Panama. Now, guess who basically runs ports on both sides of the Panama Canal? The Chinese. And guess who's doing all the infrastructure in Panama with the Belt and Road Initiative?
Wow.
Get a guess. Come on.
The Chinese.
Oh, how'd you know that, Paul? Yes. So, and many believe that if the Chinese, now somebody will say, well, Chinese, they don't own the port, but everybody knows if they want to shut it down, they're there. They can shut it down. They're also, if I read correctly, they're trying to get a base at the tip of Argentina in order to control the Magellan Strait.
Okay.
So if something ever happened, we couldn't go from Atlantic to Pacific.
Right.
Couldn't get through the canal and couldn't go through the Magellan Strait. We'd be
sounds like they're
making
making preparations for war.
Well, it sounds like they're doing some due diligence.
Yeah.
And that's not good for the old U.S. of A. But China, they are very I don't know, they're playing the long game.
Yeah.
They're playing the long game. Even in Hollywood, the Chinese box office for movies is greater than North America's box office.
Wow.
I find that pretty amazing. It used to be they started allowing films from America and other places into China I think in the 1980s and 1990s, and even now they have a quota where they're only going to allow so many foreign movies to be shown in China. So if you're a Hollywood producer, you want to make it where you're one of the movies that get shown over in China because they make a whole lot of money over in China.
Right.
So the Chinese, it's 34 movies. They have, if I read correctly, they have 75,500 movie screens in China, and we have 41,000 in the United States.
Wow.
And what happens is that a lot of the movie studios in America, they will engage in what's called anticipatory self-censorship so as not to offend the Chinese.
So would that be like how I'm not going to upload last week's episode to YouTube at all because I know they're going to censor it?
That's right. We self-censorship. We are the self-censored
pilgrims.
Okay, for instance, Fast and Furious, one of the stars in that, he was the bad guy, I think, John Cena, the former wrestler.
Okay.
I think he may wrestle some, I don't know, still. But anyway, he had apologized via the one of the Chinese social media apps for calling Taiwan a country.
Oh, wow.
Just because he called Taiwan a country, he had to, with the Chinese, this is something that's really big in China, you have to say, my mistake. So I think he tried to say it in Chinese. He said, my mistake.
Well, just so our listeners are aware, Taiwan is where the defeated forces of Chiang Kai-shek.
In 49, that's right.
That's where they escaped to.
And there are currently now in Taiwan, there are 23 million people that live in Taiwan. It's the world's most densely populated nation.
Yeah, and it's a really big bargaining piece in the global stage.
Well, it's like China cannot get over Taiwan.
No.
I mean, they're always in the Taiwan Straits. They are flying their airplanes very, very close to Taiwan.
Well, they would desperately love to control Taiwan.
They want to control Taiwan. It's like, man, you got 1.6 billion people, and you're worried about 23 million people out on an island.
Yeah,
it's about like when they got, the British gave them back Hong Kong, and I think the French gave them Macau.
Yeah,
and so they want to get all these, everything that they think belongs to them.
Taiwan is a big deal because it controls a great share of the world's
semiconductors
and microchip production.
Yeah,
and China knows that if they ever tried to invade Taiwan, there's a good chance that the Taiwanese people would just blow up those factories out of spite, like scorched earth.
Oh.
There's no way that those factories would be allowed to go into the hands of the Chinese.
Yeah.
So what they would do if the Chinese invaded, those factories are going up in smoke.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get what they wanted out of it.
Well, they are very, very sensitive about Taiwan.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, back in 2019, Daryl Morey, who was the general manager of the Houston Rockets of the NBA, this was back when Taiwan had a lot of protests against the Chinese government and how they were cracking down on protesters. And he simply, this is all the guy tweeted, he said, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." Now, this is the general manager for the Houston Rockets of the NBA. Well, that was highly offensive to the Chinese government. CCP did not like that. And then what was so crazy is that LeBron James, now this was during the time when the NBA was talking about all the injustices in America and social justice in America, America's oppressive and all this stuff. And then LeBron James said, quote, "I don't want to get in a verbal feud with Daryl Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand," and he spoke. So LeBron James is saying, Daryl Morey, you didn't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on the situation, and you shouldn't have said anything. Daryl Morey has an MBA from MIT.
Wow.
I mean, the guy, he is one of these guys that's into the analytics.
Yeah.
I mean, he even did the Pythagorean theorem for some type of something with MBA percentages and all.
Okay.
And he's a very, very smart guy. And LeBron said this to this incredibly intelligent guy that has a MBA from MIT. And people are like, LeBron, what's your motivation here? Well, you start realizing that the NBA makes billions of dollars in China.
There you go.
The Chinese love the NBA. As a matter of fact, Klay Thompson, who plays for the Golden State Warriors, He has an $80 million endorsement contract with a Chinese company. Several of the NBA players have these big endorsement contracts. Matter of fact, I've read before where some of the players make more on their Chinese endorsements than they do on their salary.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if that's accurate, but I've read that. And so Dwayne Wade, who is no longer in the NBA, he has a 10-year, $75 million contract with one of the Chinese companies. So the NBA, they at that time were beholden to China because they're getting billions and billions of dollars. And not only that, if you do a lot of research into it, you find out that the guys that own these NBA teams, they have other businesses, right? Their other businesses are heavily invested in China.
Yeah.
So not only their NBA teams, but they have other business ventures in China. And so to get all entangled with China, and the Chinese government says, you know what, we don't like you saying that Taiwan is a country, with John Cena, or the Chinese government says, we don't like you standing with the protesters in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And they threaten them with what? Money.
Yep.
Now, back to John Cena, he did the mea culpa, and all of a sudden, Fast and the Furious 9 grossed $136 million in China in its first week.
They're already up to 9 on that?
There's only, it was
word.
almost double of what they took in the United States.
Amazing.
So, it worked, and
I don't know that I've seen a single one of those 9 movies.
I haven't seen any of them. I think one of them was filmed in Douglasville, wasn't it?
Couldn't tell you.
I think so. I could be wrong. But anyway, so let me just say this. This is not against the Chinese people. So many people, you have to understand, it's just a small percentage of the Chinese population are members of the Communist Party.
Right. And I know a lot of people in China are actually Christians. Christianity's growing probably faster in China, I think, than anywhere else in the world. Is that true? There
are 130 million Christians in China.
Wow.
Most of them worship in house churches, part of the house church movement. And when you talk to the Chinese government, they're always good with their words. Here's what they'll say. In China, that the citizens, quote, enjoy freedom of religious belief. But that does not mean freedom of religious expression.
Exactly.
And they can engage in, quote, normal religious activities, but they don't refine what is normal religious activities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they technically, you can believe whatever you want to, just don't do anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed in this country.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And so, here we have China. They wield all this power through their money that they get by playing the Western capitalist nations.
Well, see, they're smart enough to know what the weaknesses of Western capitalism are. And our country, as great as it is, one of our biggest weaknesses is the fact that we are so internally divided. Our country has no, companies talk about having a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think...
The communists are good with 5-year plans, right?
Forget about a 5-year plan. Our country doesn't have a 5-month plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every time there's a new election, whatever happened in the past gets undone. We're just people fighting against each other. We can't make any progress.
Yeah.
And because we don't have a unified vision of the future, we're just a sitting duck for a country like China that does have a plan and a vision and a goal.
Well, here's the deal with China, though. First of all, the Pew Research Center did surveys, questionnaires throughout all these countries, and people in countries, although they're doing all this trade with China, they still like the United States more than China. They still favor the United States over China because they don't trust China.
Yeah.
Okay. You still get a bad feeling when you're dealing with the CCP, but yet they like that money.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it. This is so playing on the worst of human nature.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. Now, you think about China, they got all this money, supposedly. But if I read correct, and I did, once again, I was taught phonics, South Georgia phonics. It's still phonics. But China's national debt, you know what it is?
What?
Their cumulative national debt, 51 trillion.
Okay.
Ours is 31 trillion.
Wow. They managed to be more in debt than we are.
You know, they got an issue.
I can't believe it.
I had to double check that. I mean, you can, some fact check me. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I always tell my boys. Fact check me.
Yeah.
So you can fact check me if you'd like to. But if I saw that correctly, that surprised me. And of course, they finance a lot of our debt. They buy a lot of our debt through the bonds or however that works. Matter of fact, they own $1 trillion of United States debt.
That's quite a bit.
I think Japan maybe owns a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Japan has the third largest economy. Of course, we got it first. China's got it second. There's a big drop off after that. But anyway, so I want to run something else by you. Okay. Here's an article that says China is operating illicit police stations inside the U.S. We might have spoke of that.
I think we briefly talked about that.
Earlier.
I couldn't believe that.
Here is this is from a guy. His name is Dale Hurd. It's an article that he has written about it. And listen to this. It says, above a noodle shop in New York's Chinatown, agents of the Chinese Communist government reportedly operated an overseas police station for years. There are more than 100 of them worldwide. It says they may not look like police stations. They may only be the back room of a restaurant, but they're staffed by Chinese government officials. Now, the police stations, along with so-called, quote, aid stations across the U.S., are used by the Chinese government to harass and threaten pro-democracy Chinese immigrants to stop speaking out against the regime and go back to China, even kidnapping them if necessary.
Wow.
Now,
That's shocking.
That is shocking. And, these guys talk about how, there's one guy, a Chinese democracy activist, Jingwan Wang. He's a U.S. resident now living under police protection in the Netherlands, where Chinese agents regularly harass and threaten him. He was in prison for 2 months in Dubai at the request of Chinese authorities. It says he's had to fight off a knife attack in the Netherlands. Chinese embassy officials in Europe have also tried to get him arrested by telling police he had a bomb. The Chinese government also imprisoned his parents back home to try to force him to return to China.
Yeah, and just to fact check you real quick, I think that name is Jingyu Wang.
Jingyu Wang.
Yeah, there you go.
Jingyu Wang.
There you go.
See, we have our resident Chinese scholar
But let me
here.
tell you, too, I think it really needs to go the other way around. Wang Jingyu.
Do you say the
Because the last name
surname?
goes first. Yeah,
Wang-
in all Asian countries that
Wang
I'm aware of.
Zhengyu.
Yeah.
So Wang, it says, Chinese officials in the Netherlands, quote, asked me to go to a Chinese overseas police station for surrender. And they asked me to go back to China. They asked me to think about my parents. From February 2022 to February 22 of April, almost every day they made over 100 calls to me. Every day at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and kept making phone calls to me. So if you can imagine trying to get away, it says the Chinese government has reportedly forced the return of an incredible 230,000 Chinese back to the mainland between April 2020 and August of last year.
That's insane.
April 2021. Okay, so within a year.
And to think that that was during the COVID lockdowns. Can you imagine going back to China willingly?
No.
During that time especially?
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that.
Yeah.
And
So-
you brought up these police stations. Another thing I looked up was TikTok.
Yeah, tell me about TikTok.
Now,
you do the TikTok dancing and all that, don't you?
yeah, no. In fact, I had to watch a YouTube documentary just to educate myself because I had never touched a TikTok app or anything like that in my life.
I have never touched a TikTok app.
There you go.
Sounds like a book.
I'm not an app user, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you're apt to use one.
I'm not apt to use one.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so, they're trying to make us use an app to sign in our kids at children's church,
No.
And I'm fighting back on that.
You mean they would do that at church?
They would.
Oh, good grief.
But I hope the Chinese aren't running it.
Yeah,
Because
well.
so we need to look into that for sure. We need to look into that.
We'll have to talk to Dan or Kurt about that.
But TikTok is unquestionably run by the Chinese, and that is the reason why it has recently been banned from government phones.
Okay.
So there's a YouTube documentary that I would recommend, "The Disturbing Truth About TikTok" by Visual Venture.
Visual Venture.
Yeah, and I watched that, and it was very disturbing. Essentially, most social media is based around who you follow, like Facebook.
Right.
You follow people on Facebook, and then you'll see in your news feed, you will see stuff that they're posting.
Yeah.
So at least in that respect, you have a measure of control
Right.
over what you're being inundated with.
Because it's people you choose
Because
to
you
follow.
choose to follow people.
Correct.
Not so on TikTok. On TikTok, everything is run by the AI algorithm.
AI algorithm.
So instead of showing you, a feed of your people you're following,
Yeah.
all it does is constantly inundate you with whatever the AI algorithm believes you want to see based on what you've watched previously.
Do you control the algorithm, or does the
No.
algorithm control you?
Exactly the latter. The
Oh.
algorithm knows you better than you know yourself
Whoa.
because it's using, machine learning.
Okay.
So machine learning is very powerful. The algorithms are able to spot connections that we would never pick up on.
Huh.
But what it can do is it's able to know based on a lot of things what is going to attract your attention the most.
Right.
And as a result, it's very addictive for people.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you turn on that app, you're going to see something that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's something that you never asked to see,
Yeah.
but you just keep going down that rabbit hole, and you just keep getting fed, and people lose hours and hours.
Yeah.
And the bad thing is, all of the data that you're giving TikTok
Yeah.
is available to and going straight to the Chinese Communist government.
Okay.
But it's not just your habits that it knows. It is picking up on your facial recognition data. And based on that, it is also able to tell what mood you're in.
Yeah.
It's able to tell if you're depressed.
Yeah.
And it's able to tell all sorts of things. And one of the people that got interviewed on that documentary, or I don't know if they interviewed him or if they were just showing footage, but they talked about how TikTok got them into an eating disorder by showing them repeated stuff about, counting your calories and so on and so forth. And it just gets worse from there. But the bottom line of it is, why would you ever willingly fork over the most intimate details of your life to the Chinese Communist Party? I just feel like anybody, knowing what we know about TikTok, you would just have to be crazy to be on it.
Yeah.
And so I just wish people would get it off their phones, stop using it.
Get TikTok off your phone.
Get TikTok off your phone. Do not give your
That was our
information.
public service
Public
announcement.
PSA. Do not give your information to China. Get TikTok off your phone, and not even that, but just by all means, don't let your kids use TikTok.
Yeah.
Because they've got these challenges they're doing,
Is that like a milk crate challenge?
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just I can't keep track of them all, but basically, if it's one of these social media challenges, you definitely don't want your kid doing it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And people are getting killed from it, or injured at least, if not killed. People have committed suicide live on TikTok. Just all sorts of crazy stuff. And one thing about the Chinese Communist Party and the people that are beholden to it is that they don't share our common Western sensibility of Judeo-Christian morality.
Okay.
So the things that we would consider totally unacceptable, that's not the way that they think.
Yeah.
Okay? So morality, you can throw that out the window. Like when that person, I mentioned somebody committed suicide on TikTok.
Right.
Well, the people at TikTok knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And long before they called the police,
They let it.
they were just worried about drafting a public statement about it.
Yeah.
So
Here's something I think I figured out about the Chinese with this with stuff. They protect their citizens as far as certain things that they don't want them to see.
yeah.
But it's almost like the CCP wants to corrupt American society.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that we need their help.
You know that things like pornography, things like that are
Yeah.
not allowed in communist
Right,
China.
right.
They are blocked over there.
Right, but they're a fire hose over here,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. They want to let us corrupt ourselves from within, for sure. And TikTok is one way to achieve that. So by all means, do not use it, and do not allow your kids to use it.
Stay away from TikTok.
Stay away from it. But absolutely, it's like if you took all the worst parts of social media and just threw them together in one thing, that would give you TikTok, basically.
Okay, real quickly, we're about to come to the end of our podcast, but we could not talk about China without talking about their social credit system that they're implementing. It's their ranking system. You hear people talking about it. You hear people say, man, this is a bad deal. When you start reading about it, it is a bad deal. But a common theme that the policy on their social credit system is supposed to produce and supposed to bring certain things up to the surface is what they call trustworthiness.
Trustworthiness.
Yes, and
Yeah.
the Chinese word is Shengxian.
Chengxin.
Chengqing. See, I was close.
Yeah, something like that.
But they have this, they're, wanting people to engage in certain behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do not engage in the right behavior, you get, I don't want to call it a demerit, but you get marks against you. And just like a credit rating, that determines what you can get a loan for. Within their social credit score, will determine whether or not you can go to a certain school, or maybe whether or not you can get on an airplane or ride a train. You can really, they have what they call a blacklist, and you don't want to get on the blacklist. If you get on the blacklist, it takes a while to get off the blacklist. But the social credit system, they will, even for businesses, they determine whether or not they've paid taxes on time, whether or not they're maintaining their necessary license, whether or not they're fulfilling their environmental protection requirements, the product standard, quality standards. So you can get blacklisted over there, and you may have a travel ban. It says in 2019, 23 million people have been blacklisted from traveling by plane or train due to low social credit ratings maintained through China's National Public Credit Information Center. You can get banned from schools. Your potential for employment can be greatly decreased.
Yeah.
And what's so bad is if you do business with somebody that's blacklisted, then that's a mark against you, and it can lead you to get blacklisted.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, we're going to help all the people that's been blacklisted. Well, then that's going to make it where we're going to get blacklisted. And so you don't even want to help people that's blacklisted. And so anyway, so it's an individual can get demerits because this one thing says not visiting their parents for jaywalking, walking a dog without a leash, smoking in a non-smoking zone, cheating in online video games.
Cheating in video games.
I reckon that is important.
Wow.
So anyway,
See, back in my day, we actually had magazines that would teach you how to cheat in video games.
to get the cheat codes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says it takes 2 to 5 years to be successfully removed from a blacklist, which often has a negative impact on the privileges afforded to those individuals and businesses in society. So that makes you want to do the right thing. And, there used to be a song.
Right, according to what the Chinese Communist Party says.
Right. And they use that facial recognition.
Mm-hmm.
They have 200 million surveillance cameras in China for facial recognition. And so there's a song back when I was coming up. and you may have been a zygote then. I don't know, but it's this song. I always feel like somebody's watching me.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's kind of the theme with a Chinese citizen, because you know what, somebody is watching.
That's true. But
Yeah.
you know, it's not that different in our country. It's we everywhere you look, there are cameras.
Yeah.
Even over the roads here, like
Yeah.
all over the place. And I'm not quite sure why those cameras are being installed, because I'm not just talking about the red light cameras that'll give you a ticket if you run the red light.
Right.
Those are relatively rare.
Yeah.
But
People don't like those.
But those are rare compared to just regular old surveillance cameras that are stuck up on the light poles at every intersection.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, why does the government feel like they need a surveillance camera at every intersection?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a little bit curious about that.
There's a lot of surveillance. You know, you watch some of these spy movies, and they'll have, like, especially over in Great Britain, they got cameras everywhere in London.
I mean, we're allowing them to build a surveillance state around us,
You're
and
exactly
nobody's
right.
saying a word about it.
You know, nowadays, this is what's so crazy too, is always be careful when you come up to somebody's door and you're going to ring the doorbell, knock on the door. Don't be talking, okay? Because everybody's got a camera
Yeah.
on their door now, and a mic, and so you're just automatically assume anytime you come up to somebody's door and you're about to knock on the door,
Assume that you are being recorded at that moment.
assume that you're being recorded, because you probably are being recorded.
Yeah.
That's another PSA.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
we just want to help people live better lives
Yeah.
and stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's our kind. We just wanted to get all this stuff out about China. Of course, you know a lot of this stuff, but you need to keep your eye on China. And when we did the podcast last week on the World Economic Forum, and we know that certain people there like what China's doing, and even Justin Trudeau up in Canada, he said he likes the way how Xi can control the economy, just push a button.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through like a democratic process or go through.
Anybody in government who's got power
Wants more.
wants more. And of course, everybody, if you're a powerful leader, you would love to be as powerful as Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping.
Right.
Yes,
But,
I think you're right.
But we the people, we need to.
We the people kind of get in the way of that sometimes.
We need to try to get in the way of that.
Yes, and I think that's how our Constitution is written, so that the people would get in the way of government taking too much power.
And what's happening now is, people are talking more and more in the news about how we might be on the verge of a war with China.
Yeah, I don't think we want that. I wouldn't think China would want it, because they need. I hope they still need our money.
Well, I'll tell you something that is, it's dangerous for our country. But the way that the public has eroded, not the public, the way that the government has eroded public trust.
Yeah.
I just wonder if, let's just say in this weird hypothetical, China did invade the U.S.
Yeah.
How many people would want to give their lives for the U.S. government today?
Fewer than there used to be.
And would I even want to give my life? I would give my life to save my family.
Yeah.
And I would fight to protect my family, but would I fight to protect the government of Joe Biden? See, these are tough questions.
Yeah, but I'm just old Lee Greenwood over here. I'm proud to be American.
Yeah.
Where at least I know I'm free.
Yeah, but
do you want me to sing the rest of the song? Maybe do spoken
Yeah.
word. Can I do it in a spoken word format? Probably not.
if you want, go right ahead.
I think I'll pass. That'll be all right. Okay.
But the point I'm just making is that this is not the country that fought World War II.
It is not. It's different.
And
I think
I
most
feel like
people
people's
recognize that.
allegiances are much more local now.
Yeah.
And, I could see a future where this country broke up into local, principalities or whatever you would want to call it, because
I would hate that.
I mean, it wouldn't be good. I mean, there might be aspects of it that could be good, because our federal government is getting way too much
we were originally
power.
supposed to be like that
Yeah.
with the states, but then the federal government took over too much power.
Yeah.
And then what power they don't have, they do the the carrot and stick. With
Well,
the,
I
with
mean,
the
there are people
federal funding
arguing.
of certain programs. If you want the federal funding, then you got to do what we
Yeah,
tell you to
exactly.
do. Jump through these hoops, and we'll give you some money.
Well, there are people arguing that we really the best thing for our country would be to split up into two countries,
Yeah,
to liberals
I would
and
hate-
conservatives.
I'd hate to see that, but you just never know what's going to happen. But Paul, we're coming up on a hard break here. I
Yeah,
say a hard
sure.
break because that's what we say in the communication industry. Paul.
Right.
But anyway, this concludes our podcast on China, and I hope we've all learned a little bit. But keep your eye on China.
Yep.
And we got some more information. We're going to be coming up with some more podcasts in the next several weeks. And if you ever have a topic you want us to cover, just email us at our Uncensored Pilgrims email address, which
At
is
Gmail.
at uncensoredpilgrims@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
But for now, I'm Marty McLain along with Paul Price, and we're going to sign off. We hope you have a great week and see you next time on the Uncensored Pilgrims. And we need to let you know that the views that we express on this podcast belong to Marty McLain and Paul Price. They are our views. They do not reflect the views of anyone else. And with that said, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.